Well, hasn't it been a ping-pong battle this year in the monuments? First, it was Van der Poel in Milano-San Remo. Then Tadej got sweet revenge in the Tour of Flanders. 1 week later, well, it's Van der Poel again, the Dutchman, powering to here, the velodrome, Roubaix, northern France, for his third victory, third straight victory. Now just one shy of the greats in Paris-Roubaix, Tom Boonen, Roger de Vlaming. But Mathieu van der Poel showed today that he is the king of the cobbles. Alpes and de Koenig really played their cards well out there. On the cobbles, they had Jasper Philipsen deep into the race with van der Poel so they could play off of each other, because as we saw in the past, it's Philipsen who's got a mean sprint when it comes here to the velodrome and could help van der Poel if van der Poel needed that help. Pogačar was there always as the danger man, and we saw that already start to play out in that key sector. It was always going to be that key sector, the Arnberg Forest, and heading into that, Tadej didn't wait around. He started attacking, and once those attacks started coming, we saw the first cracks in Wout van Aert. We knew he wasn't quite his best this spring. Remember, he'd had that crash in the Tour of Spain, and he's still not back up to 100%, so he was always dragging behind. He had Dylan van Baarle and an outstanding Matthew Brenner, the British 19-year-old rider out there just firing along, doing all he could to help out Van Aert as much as he could, because Van Aert, well, he's a quality rider. Out of the Arnberg Forest and on further as we headed here towards the velodrome, 100 kilometers to go and a lot of cobbles to race. Tadej was lighting it up, and so much so at one point we had a group that was whittled down that included Pedersen, included our eventual winner, Van der Poel, included Philipsen, of course Pogačar, and others in there, but it was being played out and riders were dropping left and right. Unfortunately for Mats Pedersen, who was looking on fire, I thought he was going to be one of those guys that was going to be able to take on Van der Poel coming in here to the velodrome. Van der Poel was my pick pre-race, but Pedersen, I was going to give it to him if it came down to a sprint. He was looking so well coming into this Queen of the Classics. But as it does so often in the Queen of the Classics, Paris-Roubaix, luck plays a huge part as well as strength. And Mats Pedersen suffered a puncture at the worst of times, and that was it. It was gone. The race was up the road. He was no longer in contention, no longer to fight with the Alpecin duo and with Pogačar. Pogačar, though, at one point it looked like he was weak. At one point it looked like he was gone. It looked like he was bonking. It looked like he didn't have the energy. His car finally got up to him, gave him that magical bottle, the food that he needed, everything he needed to keep going, and all of a sudden he's great again. Of course, he's the world champion. Why would you ever doubt Tadej Pogačar? Even he came close to crashing with his own team car. Whew, that was close, Tadej. Don't scare us like that. He did give us a scare later on. He kept pushing the pace. After he refound his energy, he rose from the dead and he was pushing the pace, and we saw it was too much for Philipsen. Philipsen was eventually gone. We were going to have this duo of Van der Poel and Pogačar heading in here. Pogačar, world champion, racing in his debut Paris-Roubaix. We thought he was going to give it to Van der Poel, two-time winner in Roubaix, heading into this edition 2025. Instead, oh, Lady Luck plays her part again in this race. Pogačar overshot a corner, as the riders do. We saw often the riders were going off into the grass, into the dirt, on the corners, on these cobble sectors. But that time, something happened. He crashed, he hit the ground, and it was too much. Van der Poel was up the road. At one point, it looked like Pogačar, after his kind of bike change there, it took a little bit of time. It looked like he was closing on Van der Poel, but then at another point, well, Van der Poel was riding away. So much so, he had a minute, and we knew he was going to pull off his third victory in Paris-Roubaix. And Pogačar wasn't going to be able to do the same thing he did in Strade Bianche and come back from the dead, come back and catch Pitcock as he did in Strade Bianche. Here, there was no chance, because here he's dealing with a rider who is at equal level, or perhaps might be just a little bit lower when you compare, of course, to the Grand Tours. Tadej Pogačar, three-time winner of the Tour de France, winner of the Giro d'Italia last year, but it's finding it a little bit tough here on the cobbles in the hell of the north, northern France, and could never claw back that gap that Van der Poel had as he rode towards history here on the velodrome, not without incident. And a keen eye, you might have noticed at home, what the heck is going on out there with these fans? Why would you come to a bike race and throw a water bottle, not only a water bottle, we heard later from Van der Poel, first, a water bottle is wrong, a full water bottle. He said, when I asked him, he said he's gonna take legal action. So hey, fan out there, Van der Poel's coming for you next after he just conquered the Hell of the North, Paris-Roubaix 2025. To the cheer of crowds here gathered in the velodrome. What a special finish we have. What a special stadium we have this in cycling. Van der Poel celebrated his victory. Pogačar held on for second place, and back behind in the group with Vermeersch, with Van Aert, with Pedersen. Well, we knew Pedersen was going to be the better sprinter probably because Van Aert wasn't going at his best. In fact, coming in here, Van Aert tried to get rid of Pedersen. It wasn't working, and it was Pedersen who rounded out that podium. And what a great day. What a great day of action. Roubaix delivered. And again, it's Mathieu van der Poel standing on top in the middle of the velodrome, holding up that cobbled stone as winner of the 2025 Paris-Roubaix.